Ladies, puberty, PMT, pregnancy, the menopause. Yes, your hormones have been taking you for a ride for years. Hot flushes on the bus, menopausal meltdowns in the office. Whatever those hormones have made you do, Jenny Smith and Kate Bauss are here to lend a sympathetic ear. Why not write in and share your hormonal hell with the girls? Don't worry, they've heard it all before. It's time to put those hormones in the firing line. This is Dear Hormones. Welcome to your safe space, ladies. Coming up on today's show, a rant in the altogether, when a trip to the library goes bad, and brace yourselves for one woman's nightmare in the disabled toilet.
Hello, we're back. Hi, Kate.
Hello, Jenny. Hi, everybody.
So there wasn't a show last week, so sorry about that. Real life got in the way, didn't it, Kate? But in the meantime, the Eurovision Song Contest has been on. So I wonder how Zelda's been feeling.
Oh my goodness, so do I.
Yeah, because I can't think what episode that was now, Kate, when Zelda wrote in to say she burst into tears at Dal Freya's Eurovision entry, but they weren't able to perform, were they?
Not live, because there was an instance of COVID, wasn't there, in the band? But still, they still placed fourth.
Placed fourth. Oh yeah, no, I had to miss it this year, which is a big nightmare for me. I never missed the Eurovision, but I missed it. So I didn't even know that they'd come fourth. That's brilliant. So I wonder if she burst into tears at that.
Zelda, let us know what happened. I have to say I really enjoyed Eurovision this year, and but yes, I liked our English entry. Obviously didn't do too well, and I especially liked being married to a German. I especially liked the German entry this year.
Oh, did you? I'll have to look that one up.
Second bottom. So for our children were very disappointed being half German, half English, and the two bottom placed entries were Germany and England. So
were there any songs this year, Kate, that genuinely would bring you to tears, or just Zelda?
Let me think. No, really none. No, I don't.
Right, okay. So last episode we teased a story that's coming up in this week's show, Kate, a poo-based story, toilet humour, and that's coming up later on. So I just wanted to say we haven't forgotten. It's coming up.
Ooh.
Very exciting. But to start with, shall I read our first letter?
Yes, please.
This is good. It's got a great title. It's called A Screaming Banshee. And this is from Marie in North London. Dear Jenny and Kate, thank you so much for this podcast. I have always suffered dreadfully with emotional turmoil connected with my cycle, although I didn't spot the connection until my 30s. I've since wondered if I might have premenstrual dysphoric disorder. I don't know what that is, do you?
No, nor do I. Let's read on and see if we can find out more.
Yeah. Sometimes the effects can be present for up to 2 weeks. I have lived in fear of what beast I might become each month, let alone when the menopause eventually hits. On a serious note, I wonder how much of my mental health issues and personality disorder diagnosis were actually instead attributable to the influence of my hormones. It makes me sad because I feel like my true self is kind, loving and gentle, but for a good portion of the month, people are met with my furious or teary, irrational, vindictive alter ego. #psycho bitch from hell.
Aww.
Totally understand what she's talking about here. I was like that with PMT, and as you know, I turned into a bit of a monster myself with the menopause. So I really feel for this woman.
So do I. And I remember you saying, Jenny, and I'm not sure if it was on the podcast or just to me, but you saying that you felt before that for only about one week of the month, you've actually been your true self.
Yes. Yeah, I think this lady probably feels the same. It takes over so much of your life, if you do suffer badly with your periods and PMT, that you have a one week window to actually get things done.
It's very unfair.
She carries on. She says, it is wonderful to have this open discussion, to know I'm by no means alone, and to learn more about what may await me during the menopause and how to prepare for it and deal with that. So I'm so pleased that she said that, because that's really a big reason why we started this podcast, isn't it?
Absolutely.
My story is about a particularly bad episode of PMT, brackets, what I refer to as period monster, torture, turmoil, torment, all of the above.
I
Oh,
love
dear.
that. I think she could
Yeah.
coin a new meaning for PMT.
Yeah.
Yes. Period monster torture.
Okay, here we go. The screaming banshee.
Oh, I can't wait.
I've always been sensitive to noise and a light sleeper, and I often have to attend late evening events as part of my work. So after enduring 4 months of being woken up by building works because my block of flats was having a lift shaft fitted, I was pretty much at the end of my tether.
Oh, Marie.
The lack of sleep left me generally irritable, but when combined with the monthly irrational obsessions and complete lack of compassion, well, it was as if I were possessed by the Hulk himself.
Do you know, that's funny because that's exactly how my mum described herself. I don't remember, way back in episode 1, she said that every month she would transform Hulk-like, and Marie's saying exactly the same thing.
Yes, yes. During one such week, after several consecutive wake-ups, I was looking forward to Saturday when at least the builders wouldn't be working. Imagine my fury when I was awoken by a hammering noise at 8 o'clock, brackets, which might seem late, but I was tired, close brackets. Are you kidding me? Knowing the builders didn't work on Saturdays, I was full of hate for my upstairs neighbours, assuming they had chosen to do DIY and disturb my much-needed lie-in. How dare they?
At 8 o'clock in the morning, yes.
Yeah. We were amidst DIY projects ourselves, so I grabbed a hammer from the sideboard, launched myself onto the kitchen worktop, naked as the day I was born, and started banging on the kitchen ceiling.
Wow.
It was then that I saw the builder outside tapping the concrete out of his bucket, and he saw me in all my glory. My God, so beside myself at being woken up so unjustly, I didn't give 2 hoots that I was starkers. I opened the window and shouted, "It's 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning. What are you doing?" He nervously replied, not knowing where to look. We're allowed to start at 8 o'clock on Saturdays." "We'll see about that," I snapped, slamming the kitchen window and returning to bed to try to get back to sleep, whilst mentally composing a strongly worded email to the building management. I love this letter so much.
It's just brilliant. Wow. I have to say, it's a bad rule though, isn't it? I mean, being allowed to start at 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning, I am with Marie. I think that's too early. I think I need to be sleeping at 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning. I would not take kindly to that.
I need to be sleeping at 8 o'clock on most days, especially on Saturdays. Thank you. It carries on. After much tossing and turning, I was just drifting off when I was elbowed out of my half dream by voices just outside the front door. It started as a low whine, the melodic "oh" of a child not getting its own way, before I'd even fully woken up and realised it was coming from me.
This is an amazing letter.
The pitch and volume increased. Oh! As I leapt out of bed and slung my dressing gown round me, not making that mistake again, I was completely out of control. By the time I reached the front door, I was screaming like a banshee. They could hear me coming. I wrenched the front door open and screeched, "Fuck off!" to 3 terrified site supervisors who were staring at me, rooted to the spot as if I were Medusa. I slammed the door and retreated inside to stew and sob until I had transfigured back into something more human. Look, I know that is an awful experience that she had, and that must have felt really quite scary to be that out of control. But actually, when you read it, the fact that she screamed that at them into their faces.
What must they have been saying?
Marie.
Oh, Marie, wow.
Oh my God. I didn't hear a peep out of the builders for the rest of the morning. I bet she didn't. Though I was, of course, too tightly coiled to even attempt getting back to sleep.
Oh,
I laugh about it now, but I do cringe to think what my various boyfriends have had to witness. And on another serious note, with it being difficult to distinguish between hormonal displays and one's true personality, it's little wonder that none of them could handle me. Oh, Marie, I found a mindfulness-based cognitive therapy course absolutely invaluable in giving me the awareness to notice when my hormones are flaring up, the breathing space between the trigger and my reaction, and the tools to quench the fire of rage and keep things slightly more on an even keel. Much love, Marie. Marie, thank you so much for writing that letter. I think that is a really important letter to have received. I think loads and loads of women are going to relate to that, me included. And I want you to know that you are not alone, and that when our hormones take control, it really isn't your fault. So I don't want you to be beating yourself up. But I love this that you've done the mindfulness-based cognitive therapy course. That sounds fantastic.
I like it that she signs off with much love. Marie, I feel like I want to send that love right back to you. Thank you so much. What a wonderful letter. As Jenny says, it's funny for us reading it, very funny, but not funny for you at the time. I'm very glad that you found that mindfulness-based therapy course to help you.
Yeah, we are sending you a hug. We're sending you a big hug through the podcast airwaves.
A big hug. I was going to say, with neighbours, it's so tricky, isn't it? When you live above or below people. We've had all sorts of things happening with neighbours in the past.
Have you ever felt yourself picking up a hammer and banging on the wall?
I haven't. Well, actually, we've kind of slightly had it the other way round. Well,
it's a good job Marie's not living next to you then.
I don't think we're that bad, but the last flat that we lived in, we had somebody living downstairs from us, and I think she sent us a letter saying that she could hear everything. She could hear our telephone conversations clearly. She could hear us walking up the staircase. She could hear us peeing in the loo.
Oh no!
And I just, no. And so we felt so. There's not much that you can do about weeing in the loo, is there really? But
no, there isn't. And then I suppose you must have lived the rest of your life in that flat, just permanently on eggshells.
We did feel quite conscious about it all the time. And then in the house that we lived in before that flat, actually, we had a very interesting lady living next door who was very lovely. She used to write me long letters all about the joys of spring. So she would sort of write, the daffodils are out, and really and she typed them all as well. She had a typewriter, and we could hear her through the wall actually typing on her typewriter, typing me all these letters about daffodils and things. And then she invited us over one day to go for tea, and she had made little tiny sort of canapes with very carefully cut little bits of cucumber on the top. It was all very wonderful. And she had a grown-up son who lived with her. We inquired as to where the son was, and she very suddenly said, "He doesn't like Germans." He doesn't like Germans. He won't be coming downstairs. God. My husband is German, and so he wasn't going to be coming downstairs because he didn't like Germans. And it then emerged.
What was the reason for that?
Well, she explained that he had his heart broken by a German girl, and that was the reason why. So he wouldn't come downstairs. She then said things like, she was asking about Matthias's job and where he worked, and he said, "Oh yes, I work in London." But it was quite a commute from where we were living at the time. And he said, "So I have to leave at 6 a.m. And she said, "No, you don't." You leave at 6:15.
Okay. Do you know what this is sounding like to me? It sounded like the start of some sort of horror film. You know, like Misery.
Oh, no.
She sounds like maybe a really weird character like that, watching you all the time, typing you letters. The son doesn't like Germans. I mean, honestly, this is like the start of some sort of creepy Hollywood blockbuster.
well, we never had any problems. She was a lovely lady, but yes, we're very lucky with our neighbours at the moment, can I just say? but yes, it can be difficult, can't it, living so close to people. And yes, if you have noisy neighbours.
Yes, and then combine that with not getting any sleep, combine it with PMT, combine it with the menopause or whatever you want, hormones, combine it with hormones, and then it's just a step too far, as Marie has experienced. Thanks once again, Marie. Absolutely love that letter. We'll be getting that badge to you as soon as we can. Kate, you've got another letter for us.
So this next letter comes to us from Claire. She says, "Dear Jenny and Kate, I'm Claire, coming up for my 71st birthday next month. I count as part of the baby boomer generation, though I think, like many of my friends, I was defined by the 60s. Beatles, Flower Power, Ban the Bomb, all that stuff. I actually can't remember exactly when my menopause started, sometime in my early to mid-40s, but it went on for a hell of a long time. The early signs were slightly erratic periods, which was quite manageable. Then the night sweats and hot flushes started. I was in a very senior management role for a large housing association, and I remember having to attend a meeting on their behalf with a very smooth bloke who was representing a firm of architects or developers. I think I was wrong-footed from the start. I was never into power dressing, though lots of women were in the 90s. This guy thought he was the bee's knees and did a great job of making me feel small, disempowered, and unsuitably dressed. All in my mind. Although she says all in my mind, of course. And this is true that often, you know, we do it to ourselves a little bit. Poor Claire.
But there are guys out there actually that aren't all in our minds, and there are people like that. So maybe he was a bit like that as well. Give her the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. As if that wasn't enough, I was overcome almost immediately I arrived with the most gargantuan hot flush, followed by sweat pouring down my face. Oh, Claire.
No. Oh, God, at a meeting. Oh, my goodness.
When that happens in a difficult public situation, it always goes from bad to worse. A few days later, I met my gang of girlfriends for our regular Saturday tennis. In all, there were 7 of us. We met over many years, summer and winter, every Saturday morning at Parliament Hill Fields in various combinations, occasionally roping in others to make up the numbers. As soon as we sat down for coffee, I spilled the beans about this horrendous meeting. It sounds as if you need to go on HRT, said one of them. I couldn't manage without it, said another. Lifesaver, said another. From then onwards, talk about the menopause became a very regular topic of conversation with detailed discussions about symptoms and remedies. With hindsight, I benefited greatly from the fact that 3 of the women were 5 to 10 years older than me, so they'd all been through it and come out the other end. This is what, for me, Jenny.
Yeah, exactly.
So glad to know you. So glad to know you.
Yeah.
and to be doing this podcast, absolutely. Interestingly, while everyone was amenable to so-called natural remedies and indeed had tried them, they all thought there was nothing to beat HRT. I wasted no time in seeing my GP. HRT made an almost immediate difference to my life. I still had hot flushes and night sweats, but not with the same intensity or frequency as before. Life became manageable again. I realised, looking back, that I was very lucky, though it didn't particularly hit me at the time, to have enjoyed these very open, informative, and sometimes hilarious conversations within a supportive situation. Isn't that true?
I love that. Yeah, I love that. And I love that the conversation was obviously going on then as well. I know it wasn't talked about so publicly then, but the conversations were still happening between the women, which is just crucial. And that's what's so great about podcasts, isn't it? That we can all now get the word out there to even more and more people so easily. But then you had to rely on your friends being open enough to talk about it.
And she goes on, she says, an important postscript to note is that we did eventually allow some blokes to join the tennis gang, but they had to put up with our choice of conversation over coffee. I hope they found it useful.
Good. I'm sure they did. Do you know what's really good as well? If you go to our Apple Podcast reviews, there are quite a few reviews on there from men, and they're saying how helpful this podcast has been to help them understand their wives and their partners and their mums better. There's a brilliant one on there actually about a guy who's remembering. In fact, I'm going to see whether he can write into the show for us. Remembering back to an episode that his mum did when he was a kid, and he said he now realizes, having listened to our podcast, that she was going through the menopause, and he's now spoken to her about it since. So, I think it's so important that the men hear this. It's not something we should be going through alone. It's a huge part of our lives. And if, the more people that know about it, the more understanding that there's going to be. How brilliant that she was talking about it then back in the 90s, and that the men were involved then. Brilliant.
So brilliant. Claire, we're full of admiration for you and your friends. And she continues, she says, I can't quite remember when the big scare in the media about HRT and cancer happened. Did you watch, Jenny, I'm sure you did, the show Davina McCall's?
Yes.
Sex.
Yeah.
What's it called?
Sex Myths and the Menopause. It was absolutely brilliant.
It was absolutely brilliant. But a big part of that, she was talking, wasn't she, about that big scare linked to HRT and how so many women stopped. Yes. I mean, was it how many women stopped after that scare? It was at least half. I think it was more.
huge number came off. They came off in their droves thinking it was going to give them breast cancer, and actually then all the things that HRT can help prevent, that those cases skyrocketed, you know, so things like heart disease and osteoporosis, because HRT can be fantastic if you're able to take HRT, that is, can be really good for preventing those diseases. Yeah, women did come off it. So she's talking about, she was part of that, was she?
She was. She says, even then, there were enough alternative opinions to persuade me to keep going with HRT. I knew that I couldn't possibly have done my job properly without it. I was in an even more senior role by now. I think I'd possibly been on HRT for 8 or 9 years when we moved to this area and we changed GPs. Pretty soon, my GP here asked me, or rather suggested very strongly, that I might like to come off HRT. So I said I'd give it a go. Disaster. Straight back to unmanageable hot flushes, sleepless nights, dripping sweat. It wasn't going to work. And so she prescribed a different type of HRT, thought to be less risky, which might do the job. And it did. Brilliant. I think I was on that low estrogen dose until about the age of 55. When I finally weaned myself off it, I did so very gradually. But don't think that hot flushes and nighttime sweats go away. I still get them sometimes now. Up until now, I've really only talked about one aspect of the menopause, the sweating and hot flushes. Another common thing is having a very dry vulva and vagina pretty much all the time, so that your pants stick to you. Oh, goodness. This was another thing that was mentioned on the Davina McCall show, wasn't it? It's another very common symptom of the menopause, and something that people really don't talk about. I mean, because it's
too embarrassing for women to talk about that, isn't it? But it was brilliant that Davina did talk about that, and then talking about all the remedies. There's so many things you can get for that. Just go and talk to your GP. There's lots of things you can do.
So she's saying about a common thing is having a very dry vulva and vagina pretty much all the time, such that your pants stick to you. And of course, not much fun for bonking.
Now that's a word that needs to come back into fashion, isn't it? She's given her age away there, and I love it. I love the word bonking. That's such a brilliant.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Claire.
Claire, so much information in there, and
there's more. Hold on. We haven't finished. There's more.
Come on, Claire.
She's going to give advice. Using KY jelly or whatever fancier stuff you favour becomes essential. Make sure it's always there in your bedside drawer, along with your other best friend.
Love you, Claire.
Love you so much. Love you.
You're brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. We need to talk about it. It's just like Davina said on that programme. You know, it's something that needs to be talked about.
And this is what she's going to go on to say. She says, I have been shocked recently, especially after seeing the recent TV programme fronted by Davina McCall, to discover that so many women in their 40s seem to know nothing about the menopause. Come on, gals, get reading, get talking. Yes, you've said it all, Claire. Yes, get the men involved as well, and let's all get talking.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, this is going to affect every single woman out there. You know, 50% of the population will at some stage go through something like this, and it's so important to know about it, to be prepared for it, to not be embarrassed about it, you know, to know that things that, you know, Claire's just talked about are going to happen to you and what you can do to stop it. So, you know, there's so much help out there now. Thank God people are talking about this stuff now. Thank God.
And hasn't even Jenny, you being a fan of the Royals, hasn't Sophie, the Countess of Wessex, been talking this week as well? Have you seen this? Sophie, the Countess of Wessex. Oh, Jenny, she's been talking.
I'm behind on the royal news. I can't believe it. Tell me, share.
She's said all sorts of wonderful things this week. And I've got a little quote. I've got something here that she said. She said, "We all talk about having babies. Nobody talks about periods. Nobody talks about the menopause. Why not?" This is what Sophie says. Yes, and she says about periods, it's something that happens to us 12 times a year. It's something that's incredibly normal, but it's something that's very hidden. And I think it's time to say enough. So Sophie, Countess of Wessex, and Claire, who for us is royalty, I would say, wouldn't you say?
Yes,
dear Hormones,
absolutely.
Royalty you are, Claire. Royalty to us. They are saying the same thing. Thank you, Claire.
Okay, Kate, here we go. Letter 3. This is the letter that I teased in episode 6. Ooh. This is, brace yourself, guys. This is all about the toilet.
On one hand, I'm excited, and on the other hand, I'm not sure if I do want to hear this.
Honestly, when I read this letter, I actually had tears in my eyes. But here we go. It's called Drop Off.
No.
Dear Jenny and Kate. Oh, this is from Anonymous, by the way.
You you say you're going to try and keep a straight face? No, you're not, Jenny. We all know it's not going to happen.
I will try. Dear Jenny and Kate, don't ask me why, but I've always had to go to the toilet for a number 2 way more often when I have my period.
I'm already laughing. Okay.
She says, I Googled it the other day and it's definitely a thing. One website explained that the period hormones may stimulate muscle contractions in the intestines and bowels, which are close to the uterus, causing more frequent bowel movements. Please keep this in mind when I tell you my story, and please feel free to laugh. Great.
You've got license to free pass.
Okay, here we go.
Can I just say, I'm not sure whether Jenny's able to read the story. She's just had a massive laughing fit.
I might have to pass it on to you. Here we go. Right. Okay. Right. At work, we had a disabled toilet, and this tended to be the toilet of choice when you needed more than just a wee. As I said, my period used to present the problem of more frequent poos, so I headed off to the disabled toilet to do my business. There were 2 doors to negotiate in this particular loo. There was an outer door, which took you into the washroom, and then another door where the disabled loo was located. The lock on this door was notoriously dodgy and kept you on high alert when trying to do your thing. I just sorry, because I know how it ends.
You've read it already, haven't you? I haven't.
Okay. I just settled down on the toilet and was getting close to drop off when I suddenly heard the rattle of the outer door. In a blind panic that this person would be able to push through the dodgy lock on the disabled door, I leapt up to secure the bolt. But my timing couldn't have been worse.
No!
Just as I stood, gravity came calling, and what should have landed in the toilet bowl shot out of my backside and landed squarely on the floor at my feet. oh my God.
Jenny, how many times have you read this story to yourself?
I
think you've probably read it a few times, and yet Jenny's got tears streaming down her face.
Because now, seriously, right? So now imagine what that looks like. In the office toilet, you're in the office toilet for disabled loo. Someone's already trying to get in, by the way, and your poo is now on the floor at your feet. She says, they say that the menopause can have an impact on your muscle mass. And as I looked down at that sorry state on the pale grey tiles, I remember thinking to myself that now might be a good time to start working on my core strength. Oh my God. Oh, I just love that letter so much. That is so true about having to go to the toilet more when you have your period. That is 100%. I had that.
Claire says, come on girls, get talking. Well, wow, we really are talking. We're talking about everything.
I know, we've covered it all in this episode. Oh, and then that reminds me of the letter we had last week about the lady who ate all the licorice.
Yes.
And then ended up having what we think was diarrhea in her trousers at the market. And now this girl at work is having to, this is what I've been laughing about as well, is she then obviously she hasn't mentioned this bit, but she obviously had to clear that up. She had
all
to
the time
clear
with somebody rattling at the door outside. Hurried, clear up.
I love the bit that she says at the end where she says, I looked down at the sorry state on the pale grey tiles. In an office, what the flooring's like.
Oh, and she's going to have to work on her own flooring, on her own pelvic floors.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, good luck. Thank you, Anonymous. I will track you down. I will get that badge to you, come what may. Thank you so much.
I've actually got tears in my eyes as well.
Oh,
Partly from the letter and partly from seeing your reaction, Jenny, which just makes me laugh as well.
It's just that I knew, even though I knew what was coming, I can't, every time I think about that story, especially because I also used to go to the disabled toilet at work. And now listen, I never used to go to the toilet to do a number 2 unless I absolutely had to.
Okay.
I'm always a come home, do it at home, keep it
Right.
behind your own front door. That's what my motto is. But sometimes, very, very occasionally, I've had to go at work, and I always pick the disabled toilet as well. I wonder if everyone else does that. Hopefully no one's been on the floor just before I popped in. That would be quite gross. Oh, anyway, Kate, let's read our last letter. Let's go for our last letter.
The tears in my eyes have made my nose run as well. Yes, let's read our last letter. And our last letter, wonderfully, Jenny, comes to us from our youngest ever writer. This comes to us from a 14-year-old.
I'm so excited. That's brilliant. I love it. We have a 14-year-old listening to the podcast. I can't believe it. Oh my God. So we've had a 70-year-old on the podcast, and now we've got a 14-year-old, just to prove that this stuff affects us all women. It doesn't matter how old you are, we're all going through it.
And I'm sure Claire would be very proud, Claire saying that everybody needs to get talking. Even a 14-year-old feels able to talk about things. So this is really wonderful. Let's hear what she has to say. Hi there. My name is Miley. A great name. And I've been listening to your podcast ever since I overheard my mum listening to it in the kitchen whilst doing the washing up.
Oh, that's interesting. So that's what we need to do then. We need to get the women to listen to this podcast in front of their teenage daughters so that it gets them talking as well. That's great.
She says, I love it. And she's capitalised the love. Miley, we love you. Thank you.
Thank you, Miley.
I think it's so amazing that you've created a safe space for women, girls, to talk about their hormonally related experiences, and a space in which we feel heard and less alone in our hormonal struggles. It's so important that as women, we feel we're able to talk about these things, which are just part of our biology and need to be way more normalised.
Oh my goodness, this is such a lovely letter from a 14-year-old as well.
I know. Anyway, enough of the fangirling.
Oh. No, we want more.
We like fangirling.
More.
I'm writing to tell you the story of a time where I didn't feel able to talk to even one of my very best friends about the fact that it was that dreaded time of the month for me. I think I was 11 at the time. I had only started getting my period a few months before. I was extremely self-conscious about it. It was like an unspoken taboo. Never talk about period stuff at school. It's not that me and my friends weren't close. We were the closest of the close, and we still are to this day. I just would never have dreamed of talking about my period with my friends. And this must be, I think, when you first start your period, you do. I mean, I don't think I spoke to my friends about it when I first started my period.
I didn't. I think I've said in the previous episode, I was 11 also, and I was absolutely mortified that I'd started my period. I was embarrassed. I felt ashamed. I don't know why, but yeah, I would never have dreamt of talking to anyone about it. Yeah, I just felt deeply ashamed.
Well, I think you feel so self-conscious, don't you? And also it's that thing when you're a teenager and you're starting your periods, you don't know which of your friends have started their periods and which of them haven't. There's a bit of a, no one feels quite comfortable talking about it because you don't know what stage different people are at.
It's such a shame, isn't it, that we do still, I know it's because we're very young when we start our periods, but that it is an issue that is embarrassing. And hopefully the more things are talked about over the next few years and so, that it will become less and less embarrassing, and that girls will be able to talk about that with their friends, not feel that sort of embarrassment. Or maybe that just comes with their age, the fact that they're not mature enough yet to sort of deal with it.
I mean, that's going back to Sophie, the Countess of Wessex. She said that as well, didn't she? That it's something that happens to us 12 times every year, and yet people don't talk about periods. And we need to start talking more about them. And well done. Thank you, Miley, for writing this. So one weekend, me and one of my best friends decided to have a sleepover. As you might be able to imagine, if you've ever had a sleepover or have children who have had sleepovers, we had planned everything that can possibly be planned for a sleepover within an inch of its life.
Yeah.
We had never had a sleepover together before, and there was much excitement. But of course, my period had to come along and make it that bit harder to have the perfect sleepover.
Oh, my heart breaks for her.
I'd never had a sleepover whilst on my period before, so pretty much every half hour, I would be running off to the toilet to check my pad and make sure that there was no chance of it leaking. I'm pretty sure I was very obvious about it, and I have no doubt my friend and her mum both knew very well it was that time of the month for me.
Yeah,
So self-conscious, you think I've got to check.
I know.
Anyway, at some point in between these regular trips, we sat down to watch a movie together with a very yummy treat of strawberry cheesecake ice cream and raspberries. When the movie was done, we stood up and we stretched our lazy muscles, and to my absolute horror, I looked down to see a big red stain on my pyjama shorts.
Miley, my heart goes out to this girl. Oh my God, poor girl at that age.
Panic. What should I do? I clearly hadn't thought this through enough. I had no spare pyjama bottoms with me, and I definitely could not wear jeans to bed. There was only one solution. I was going to have to tell my friend and borrow some of her pyjamas. Oh dear. Have you ever been in this sort of situation before, Jenny, where you've...
I've had experiences at school where I've leaked, onto my skirt, which has been really embarrassing. And I actually had one incident when I was very young, when I just started my periods. And I didn't realise, because I was only 11 and we didn't really talk about periods and I just knew I'd get them. I didn't realise, and makes me sound so silly, that you carried on getting your periods at night time. So I used to go to bed without a padding. I didn't realise.
Gosh.
And this one time we were camping, we were in our caravan on holiday, and I'd obviously bled all over the sleeping bag, and I woke up like absolutely shocked and stunned and crying. I was like, what's going on? And my mum said, well, you've got your period, why didn't you have a pad in? I said, I didn't know I had to wear one at night. I didn't know you got your period at night. So little things like that when you're so young, and not enough is talked about. I don't even really remember having that conversation at school, and my mum obviously just hadn't thought that she'd need to explain that to me. So it wasn't her fault, it was just me just being a bit dim, I suppose. But yeah,
poor Jenny.
I have had a kind of similar kind of experience, but thankfully I was with my family, whereas this poor girl Miley is at her friend's house, and it is mortifying. My heart goes out to her.
So she said, no, there was only one solution. I was going to have to tell my friend and borrow some of her pyjamas. Full of nerves, I took a deep breath to ask her, wait. I looked down onto the sofa, only to see a big, squashed, juicy raspberry sitting on the sofa. Don't worry, it was wipeable. My hero, my lifesaver. I don't think I've ever been so grateful to see a raspberry in my life.
Oh,
it was a raspberry. I showed my friend and her mum, with obvious relief in my voice, keen to show them it wasn't a period stain as fast as possible.
Yes.
And they got me a pair of fresh pyjama shorts. As you can imagine, this left me with the new issue of how on earth I was going to make sure that I didn't actually leak onto these pyjama shorts.
What a relief! What a relief! She must. I felt that relief when she said that about the raspberry. I almost felt what she would have felt that day. Yes. Oh my God, that's just like a dream come true scenario, isn't it? Thank God.
Never been so happy to see a raspberry. But that's a story for another time. She says about, oh gosh. So she says she was going to make sure that she didn't actually leak onto those pyjama shorts, but that's a story for another time. I wonder if she did leak onto those pyjama shorts. Gosh, Miley, she's got more to tell us.
If you're listening, we want to know now what that story is about the pyjamas. Please tell. Now, I've shared my story about leaking all over the sleeping bag, so come on.
Did you leak on the sleeping bag, Miley? Oh, Miley. She says, several years later, me and my friends now all openly talk about our periods, and I am so thankful for that. Although my raspberry stain story was all very exciting, I'm rather glad that I will never have to feel a similar feeling of absolute terror and nerves linked to my period again. Well, I hope I won't. Thanks again for all you do on this podcast. I hope you enjoyed this story from Miley, aged 14.
Absolutely love that story, every single bit of it. The fact she's 14 and she's written into our podcast, yay, that's a win straight away. But a story that we can all relate to, apart from you maybe, Kate, because you have already told us that you've got very light periods. But yeah, for a lot of women, and also Miley, something to look forward to in later life, that you might get sudden really heavy periods in the menopause. There you go.
Jenny, no.
There you go, Miley. So give it another 30 years.
But if you're able to, you've said, Miley, that you're now able to talk to your friends, and what a wonderful thing that is. Just as Claire has told us, talking to your friends helps so much all through your life.
Yeah, I think maybe when I got a little bit older, I was able to sort of talk to my friends about it, but not to the extent that I feel that Miley is talking about, which gives me so much hope.
Too right, Jenny.
Yeah, come on, sisters.
Oh, thank you so much to everybody who's written in to the show today. What a collection of fantastic letters.
Yeah, we've had a real mixed bag today, haven't we? I've loved them.
Such honesty.
Yeah, really, really good. So everybody who was featured on the show, you are all getting a badge. We will get those out to you. I've just actually ordered some more, Kate, because we actually ran out.
Oh.
Yeah, so we've got a whole new bag has arrived of the badges. Just another little reminder for you to keep sharing this podcast with your friends. Tell somebody about it. If you could rate us, review us on Apple Podcasts, that all really, really helps with getting the word out there, and we would massively appreciate that. So thank you very much.
Maybe we can end with what Sophie, the Countess of Wessex, said when she says that no one's talking about the menopause, no one's talking about periods. And then she said, didn't she? I think it's time to say enough.
Absolutely. And on that note, we'll see you next week. Bye.
See you then. Bye.
That was Dear Hormones with Jenny Smith and Kate Bauss. If you've got a story to share, email the girls at dearhormones@yahoo.com or they're @dearhormones on Instagram. Until next time.